I've been looking for the most expensive Pokemon products in the world, and I think I've found some of them. So let's start with the Poké Ball tins. These Poké Ball tins are notoriously bad for damaging packs. They get crammed into these tiny tins and then they'll roll around during distribution and getting them to store shelves. They can be a real mess sometimes. However, there are a few that have actually become quite expensive. The main one that surprised me was the Dive Ball. This is the most expensive of all of the Poké Balls across multiple online marketplaces at about $100. The packs inside of this one largely contribute to the price, as you could get packs like Burning Shadows, Lost Thunder, and even X and Y evolutions. This is part of the reason why these tins have become quite so expensive. But Dusk Balls tend to be about the same price as they released at the same time as the Dive Ball, so it's likely they also had the same packs inside of them. And from one tin to another, let's talk about the bigger tins found within the TCG. We actually have three main types of tin nowadays in the TCG. We got the Poké Balls, the mini tins, which we will get to, and then the larger tins introduced during the early days of Pokemon. Most of the most expensive tins are from the Diamond and Pearl era, such as the Level X Dialga and Level X Palkia tins, which are weirdly different in price. The Palkia sells for about $1,100, whereas the Dialga sells for around $1,800. But the most expensive tin that I could find is the Cynthia's Garchomp Level X tin, which would cost you about $2,500 to get today. But I want to talk about a surprising addition to the expensive tin roster, the Power Partnership tin. This tin is not even 10 years old and is already one of the most expensive tins out there at around $800. So let's end our tin adventure with the newest addition to the tin lineup for the TCG, the mini tins. These mini tins are actually really similar in price. You have the old Celebrations mini tins that sell between $30 and $45, then the Paldean Fate, Crown Zenith, and 151 tins that are also around the same price. I don't know if someone put some kind of cap on the prices of these tins or the display boxes, as all the display boxes tend to sit at around the $270 mark. Wait, I lied, we actually do have one more tin, the stacking tins. They're not that interesting. They do however have the chance to have Cosmic Eclipse in them, which is why the first generation of the Electric Grass and Water stacking tins sell for anywhere between $120 to $150. Let's move on to the various decks we have coming up next in the video, starting with the regular battle decks. These are boxes you can find on store shelves in places like GameStop and Target that contain pre-made decks to get people to learn how to play the TCG. They often aren't very good though, especially in recent years, and the most expensive of these comes from the Sun and Moon Celestial Storm set, where this Mega Blastoise Battle Arena deck box came out to coincide with the release. This box would nowadays cost you around $200. But what about the Trainer Toolkit? These are boxes that contain pretty much everything you need to actually start attending Pokemon sanctioned events, such as regionals or local tournaments. They contain sleeves, coins, die, damage counters, and even sometimes a couple of cards to add to your deck. They're not really that new, but the most expensive of these is the 2020 Trainers Toolkit at about $100. I did not want to spend too long on toolkits, as I think this next product is way cooler and a much better way to get fans into the TCG, the World Championship decks. I personally really enjoy watching the World Championships, as every year you get to see how far the meta has come, how players have adapted, and who is going to be the next big star. And to celebrate the best performing decks every year, Pokemon release a World Championship deck to coincide with the event. The most expensive of these is the 2006 Hitoki Yano BLS deck, which sells for up to $1,700 today, which is insane. One product that I think Pokemon really nailed are the build and battle boxes at stadiums. These serve as an excellent way to get people into the TCG, as not only do you have to go to an event to get one, you also have to partake in the event during pre-release. So if you want to open the newest set, you have to physically go to an event and sign up to take part. The most expensive for these build and battle boxes comes from Sun and Moon Team Up, with this box selling for $850 to $1,000. As for the build and battle stadiums, the most expensive is the Evolving Skies version at $600, that you could just buy off store shelves without attending an event. And to end our section on playable TCG decks, we have the League Battle decks, or whatever they're called in older generations. These are battle decks that contain 2 or more decks within them so that people can play the TCG together. They're one of my favourite products to grab whenever I come across them, and the most expensive of these is the Pikachu and Zekrom GX League Battle deck at $400. But now let's move into the bulk of modern Pokemon products, the collection boxes. I feel like nowadays for every new set we get a couple of different collection boxes, so I have split these up into a couple of categories, starting with the figure collection boxes. These are boxes that often contain some packs, a promotional card, and then a figure to go along with them. And the most expensive of the figure collections that I could find is the Reshiram and Charizard GX figure collection from Sun and Moon Unbroken Bonds, that would cost you anything up to $1,000 to get today. And then we have the special collection boxes. These boxes are often released to commemorate a special set being announced, such as Prismatic Evolutions, the Accessory Pouch, or Shrouded Fable and the Greninja EX Special Illustration Collection. They were first introduced during the Sun and and Moon era, with the most expensive of these coming from Sun and Moon Shining Legends, the Raichu GX Special Collection box, which would cost you about $360 today. Tournament collections are probably the newest product on the list so far. They're released to coincide with major set releases and are all based on various trainers relating to the sets they coincide with. For example, a Lily Tournament collection was released to coincide with Journey Together, or a Cyrus was released to coincide with Crown Zenith. These tournament collections are new, they're fun, and they can be pretty inexpensive. However, the most expensive of these so far is the first to ever do it, the Professor Juniper Tournament Collection, which had a chance of containing Evolving Skies packs. This tournament collection nowadays sells for around $80 to $100. Since the release of Black and White, Pokemon have continuously won up to the products they make. It started with the ETBs, and then they created full art cards. Then they just kept going and going until we got the premium collection boxes. These are boxes containing a lot of packs, as well as some exclusive promotional cards to go with it. The most expensive of these premium collections is the X and Y Trainers Collection box, which sells pretty consistently at around $2,140. This next product has one of the hardest prices to pinpoint on the entire list so far. Before we got a UPC or two every year, we would get the Super Premium collections. These were the precursors to the Ultra Premium collections and were cheaper to make and distribute for the Pokemon Company. It was basically just a fancier cardboard box with some promos and packs. They're pretty cool, and the most expensive of these is the Pokemon Generations Super Premium collection, containing Mewtwo and Mew, as well as a little figure for them as well. These boxes nowadays would sell for around $2,000, but some have sold for closer to $3,000 before. Pokemon have of course got to cater some of their products though to a much cheaper audience. Sometimes it's hard to get bogged down with wanting the most expensive, biggest, and most extravagant products possible. It's not always about this though. Sometimes it's just nice to have a product and open it, and that is largely what the Knockout collections were for. They had some packs, a couple of reprinted promos, and they were simple and easy. They first came out back in July of 2017, with the most expensive actually being entirely exclusive to Australia. This is the Typhlosion and Meganium Knockout collection, one of very few products ever to be exclusive to Australia that could cost you about $120 to get today. Let's now talk about some of the EX, V, and GX boxes. These tend to be generation exclusive Pokemon boxes with EX in Gen 6, GX in Gen 7, and of course V during Gen 8. Some of these boxes have become really quite expensive, so let's start with the EX boxes, where the most expensive is the Pikachu EX Red and Blue collection box from 2016, which contained multiple X and Y generations packs. This box could set you back anywhere from $1,800 to $2,000. As for the GX box, the most expensive that I could find was the Pokemon Tag Team Powers collection box with Umbreon and Darkrai GX. There were two of these boxes made. One came with a Jumbo Espeon and Deoxys tag team card, and one came with a Jumbo Umbreon and Darkrai tag team card. These boxes are now really expensive, with both of them selling for around $1,500. The V and VMAX boxes would prove way cheaper, mainly because they're still pretty new. The most expensive V box that I could find was the Meowth VMAX Special Collection, which sells for anything from $250 to about $320. As for the V-Star collections, technically the most expensive is the Arceus V-Star UPC. However, for the regular V-Star Premium collections, it is still Arceus. This box was amazing. It had Evolving Skies, Brilliant Stars. It had just about every good pack from the Sword and Shield era found within it, which is partially why it sells for up to $200 today. We have done the VMAX box and the V-Star box, so now let's talk about the VMAX and V-Star battle boxes. These boxes came towards the end of Sword and Shield and contained Pokemon who had received a lot of cards during this era, such as Zeraora and Deoxys, who both had many cards added to their roster during Sword and Shield. These boxes are weirdly both very similar in price, however the Zeraora seems to just have the edge over the Deoxys, with these boxes selling for $80. And let's wrap up the collection boxes with the pin collections. Now, these ones are a little bit tougher to identify. I like to consider anything that comes with a pin collection, and this seems to be the general consensus amongst sellers, with the most expensive of these being the Mew Mythical Premium Collection from X and Y generations at around $600. And now we are getting into the good stuff. So let's start with the Elite Trainer boxes. Elite Trainer boxes were first introduced in the Black and White era of Pokemon cards and became an immediate hit with fans. They have sleeves, they have dice, they nowadays have promo cards, and they most importantly had a decent amount of packs in them. And they have become very expensive, especially for the older sets. I decided the best way to do this would be to split up the Pokemon Center ETBs and the regular ETBs, with the most expensive expensive regular ETB being the Plasma Storm ETB, which recently sold for $12,000. As for the Pokemon Center ETBs, these are still pretty new, and as such the most expensive is the 151 Pokemon Center Elite Trainer box at about $1,000. One product I was surprised at how expensive it was the collector's chest. Now collector's chests have been pretty popular since the X and Y era, with a new one generally coming out every autumn across the world. However, the most expensive of these is surprisingly not the 2016 Shiny Mega Gengar one, the first one ever made. No, the most expensive is the Armored Mewtwo collector's chest from 2019, which would cost you $1,600 today. Which means we're now in the good stuff, the packs, the blisters, and of course the booster boxes. So let's start with an individual pack of Pokemon cards. This is the product that started it all, pulling Pokemon from your first ever pack. And of course the most expensive of all of the packs that we have ever got is the one that started it all, a base set first edition booster pack, which genuinely could cost you anything up to $10,000 if it's been weighed and it's a heavy pack. Now this of course is kind of obvious, so I did want to find the second most expensive pack as well, which is from Skyridge, which would cost you around $2,000. As for the blister packs, once again it is the base set blister, which contained only one pack inside of it. This single pack again would cost you around $8,000. Once again though, the second most expensive of these that I could find is again Skyridge. These are kind of insane, so before we get into the most expensive booster box, we have to talk about the most expensive booster bundle. These are still relatively new and have not really had time to make their mark on the Pokemon fandom, and so the most expensive at the moment is the Crown Zenith booster bundle at $120, which means finally we are at the booster boxes, with the most expensive of course being a first edition base set booster box at $193,750. Now this box did sell for around $300,000 back in only 2021 through Heritage Auctions. However, in the last couple of years that price has been steadily declining for some reason. The second most expensive booster box is the pretty rare EX Team Rocket Returns at around $65,000 from what I could find. Thank you guys for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please consider subscribing.